I think it's very important to have a place to go, because the life within, or the inner being, our being, doesn't need anything. It is the ego that is in need of things. And we can call our ego anything we want, like our personality, our defense mechanisms, our protection, as you're saying. So with that distinction, in mind, then the ego also needs to be trained. It's not like we need to get rid of the ego, because the ego is helpful in many ways, but it does need to be like a kid needs to be told, do this and do that, and you don't get to come in this place. There is boundaries to the ego, right? So it's important to make that distinction, because otherwise we get confused, like, oh, how do I like bring up my being, or awaken my being to be more present, in the qualities, let's say you were saying the qualities of love, and the qualities of like almost like an open embrace of life as it is, right? The being is quite happy, to live in this openness, and in this what appears to be like an infinite ocean of possibility and creativity. But the ego is never happy. It's always, I need more, and when is this going to happen so that I can feel complete? And this distinction between the outer and the inner is important to make, because on the outside there is all kinds of things to accomplish, and the being could care less if they're accomplished or not, because it doesn't depend on them. It's not like, oh, I'm going to feel better because we achieved something. Okay, it's just a supportive, whatever shows up, and open, and kind, and kind of accepting of everything. It's important to have something to focus on. And actually the focus is really driven by the awareness that you have of what is important for you, or what is meaningful for you. The ego is not going to like it sometimes that you're talking about meaning, and kind of like what is expansive for your being, right? Because the ego wants to control the show, like be the center of attention. And whenever it's driven out of that space of being the protagonist and the main source, then it gets really concerned and angry. So and like you said, subtle. It has subtle ways of showing up that kind of sneak in, and we don't know, like, oh, I didn't even know that I was acting from that place. But one of the great things about kind of making this distinction, between these two worlds, is that you build capacity to be more and more spacious with your own self. So when these mechanisms of defense show up, you don't punish yourself for it. It's like, oh, there I am again. it's not very helpful. So then if you get contracted because you're judging yourself, it becomes more of a have to, like an obligation um, to bring up your being, or to call your being to your life, and the being doesn't show up, Ines, when that happens. The being, you'll notice, or you're already noticing, I mean, how is it that you can become more spacious? That's something that is different for everybody. But the 7 roots, I was going to talk about it a little earlier, but I'll just say it now. The authoring of your life, right, is a question that is almost like a muscle that you're continually asking yourself. It's like, what do I want to bring into being, into manifestation, right? Like, what is the thing that really is important and meaningful to me? And that has a quality of authenticity, right? Like, you start thinking, what is authentic to me? Commitment really it's a very, very useful word in this. I have found, like, commitment, because commitment comes from persistence. It's like, okay, let me go into what I want. And sometimes you don't have any more energy, and then you have to do something else. But then you go back into what you want, and over again, you're building this muscle of, it's kind of like a capacity to take action on the things that are important to you. And that's why in the community, we say that it's important to have a project, something that is really meaningful for you. Because if you don't, then these questions, any question about being, cannot be channeled, correctly. I think that's a very important point relative to your question. Commitment to our own leadership, in spite of the challenges, comes from your determination to continually go into what is authentically meaningful for you and take action in that direction. And then, because the root of learning is right underneath it. So, you cannot see it, Anyway, right beneath this root up there, authoring your life, there is the root of openness to learning. Well, what happens is that you take action and you learn. It's like, what happened, what am I doing? What is helping, what is not helping, and you start becoming really a pro at taking action into the project or the area that you're really passionate about. You become a pro because you do it every day. The power of practice, right? So